I'm Andrew Bennett. I'm the current 3GPP SA Working Group 2 Chair, and in the next 25 minutes I'll give an overview and status of the SA2 Working Group. The next few slides will provide a short background of 3GPP, SA2's place in it, SA2's role, and a brief profile of the working group. Take a look at an overview of 3GPP. So it consists of 3 technical specification groups, or TSGs, and their working groups, each with different responsibilities. The TSGs decide on the scope of the work that will be done in each release, and each TSG coordinates the work done in their working groups and formally approves the technical work, the specifications and the change requests, and the work item descriptions. The working groups, however, are where the great majority of the technical work and discussion takes place. So having had a quick look at the overall setup of 3GPP, let's look at SA2's place within 3GPP. So SA Working Group 2, or SA2 as it's more informally known, is a working group of SA with overall responsibility for the 3GPP system architecture and services. It takes service requirements developed by SA1 with stage 1 requirements and develops architectural requirements of its own for specified core network entities and the interactions between them. This is stage 2. And then the stage 3 specifications are developed from the stage 2 specifications. Of course, performing these activities requires close coordination between SA2 and many of the other working groups in 3GPP. On the right-hand side, we see SA2 highlighted within the TSG SA, and the working groups that SA2 interacts with most or has dependencies on or coordinates most with are shown still. So CT Working Group 1, 3 and 4 in TSG CT. All of the other SA working groups have some interactions and dependencies, coordination with SA2. And then also in TSG RAN, frequent interactions, coordination required with RAN 2 and RAN 3. And so to highlight the coordination that's required between the different working groups, the arrows show these frequent interactions and coordination between the different working groups. This is typically done via the use of liaison statements sent between working groups. But also it is expected that individual member companies will initiate work in a working group based on the completion of specifications in another working group. So let's take a bit more detailed look at the role that SA2 has. So it develops the overall 3GPP system architecture and services, including the user equipment, the access network, the core network, and the IP multimedia subsystem. It takes a system-wide view and defines the main entities of the system architecture and how these entities are linked to each other. SA2 also defines the main functionality and the information exchange between these entities. It currently has responsibility for the 5G system and evolved packet system architectures, including the 3GPP enhancement for multimedia services, including emergency services, IoT, and other market sectors and vertical industries related use cases. And as we talked about before, it coordinates with other 3GPP working groups and all relevant standards development organizations, SDOs, industry fora, and market representation partners. On the right-hand side, we have the 5G core network architecture, which is defined in two ways. The SPA-based core network architecture at the top, and the reference point architecture at the bottom. The next few slides provide a profile of the SA2 working group. So from a leadership perspective, we have myself, Andrew Bennett, Chair from Samsung, two Vice Chairs, one Chang Sang from Huawei, and Dario Serafino Tonesi, Qualcomm. And there are three parallel streams of work during a meeting to handle the discussion of the many work items, and these are moderated by the Chair and Vice Chairs. Technical leadership of individual work items is provided by the rapporteurs, helping to resolve technical debates, organising between meeting conference calls, and in-meeting drafting sessions, and reporting on progress of their work items. And then, of course, essential to the running of SA2 and all the 3GPP groups is the support provided by the meeting secretaries from MCC. Next is a profile of a typical SA2 meeting. So we run from Monday through Friday, and Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday for handling documents for the first time. Thursday and Friday we handle revisions of those documents, and we return on Friday to handle further revisions of those documents. So starting Monday in Q1, we have a plenary session where everyone's together in a single stream, kicking off the meeting, agreeing the agenda and so on. And then immediately after the morning coffee break, we break into three parallel streams, and these run through till Q4. Q5 can be allocated to further parallel streams or drafting sessions or a single stream if necessary. And there's a similar situation Tuesday and Wednesday, except that on Wednesday after the coffee break in the afternoon we have a plenary session, single session, for discussion of SIDs and WIDs, discussion of the work plan, and anything else that requires a single stream, a single session, for example, a show of hands for making decisions. Then, as I say, on Thursday we start handling of revised documents from Q0 all the way through till Q5. We continue on Friday, and then after lunch on Friday we come back as a single group for a plenary session to handle any further discussions that need to be handled in a single session. We do a block approval of everything that was agreed in the parallel sessions, and then we complete the meeting around 4 p.m. in the afternoon. As one of the busiest working groups in 3GPP, SA typically has 6 ordinary meetings a year and 1 ad hoc meeting, each lasting 1 week, as we saw on the previous slide. The ordinary meetings are face-to-face and globally distributed, as seen by the table on the right. And we're just coming up to the November meeting in Chicago. The ad hoc meeting is expected to be electronic via email discussion and conference calls, similar to what was done for all meetings during the pandemic period. And between meetings, there are additional conference calls and email discussions, so the delegates rarely have a chance to rest. Over many years, SA2 meeting attendance has exceeded 150 delegates, and that number has climbed steadily over recent years, peaking during the pandemic when people could participate remotely, but now consistently around 250 participants. The number of input documents per meeting has also climbed steadily, from around 400 back in 2016 to now typically more than 1,000 since 2020. Not all can be handled during a single meeting, but those that are will often go through multiple revisions until hopefully agreed. And the graph on the right-hand side shows these numbers, and in red the number of noted or not agreed documents. The yellow, those documents we were not able to handle or were postponed, and then the green, approved, endorsed or merged documents. The remaining slides will look at SA2 and its activities for Release 18 and Release 19. This slide shows the schedules for Release 18 and Release 19, the various stages and working groups. So in blue, we see Release 18, and SA2 froze in 2023 in June, and since then we've been working on maintenance of the specifications that were frozen in June, and we're also working towards finalizing the Release 19 content in December this year. We've already made a start on some Release 19 work in SA2, and we will freeze that work in December 2024. So let's look at the content of Release 18. It saw the inclusion of 28 topics, work and study items, and this is the largest number in a release so far. Many of the work items for SA2 in Release 18 are new features enhancements, and so those were on the right-hand side in the lower table. The others are continuations of work that was started in Release 17, and in some cases has been going on since Release 16. And of course the foundation for all of this was Release 15 and the start of 5G. As mentioned before, Release 18 has frozen, and we are in progress with maintenance for the specifications that were frozen in June this year. But in parallel, we've been working on defining the scope of the work that will be carried out in Release 19. So the next few slides outline the process that we've been following in order to define that content. And here is the timeline and the stages in that process. So it started back in June with the SA Release 19 workshop, which triggered moderated discussions in SA2 for core set of items, and SA2 discussed that first set of items in the August meeting, and then in SA in September there was approval of the first set. Then SA2 had further moderated discussions for 3 additional items, and SA2 had discussion on agreement in the October meeting, which is where we're up to now. And looking ahead, there'll be further SA2 discussion and agreement in the November meeting, and in December, SA will need to approve a final set of items for Release 19. After that, SA2 will go on to discuss TEI 19 items, which are small enhancements that don't require any study work. So we'll discuss those in January and February 2024, and SA will approve a set of TEI 19s in 19 items in March 2024. So going through that process in more detail, we had an SA meeting in June, and companies were invited to submit presentations of what topics they wanted to see worked on in Release 19. And based on this input, a list of 17 core topics listed on the right-hand side were agreed, from which SA2 was requested to create study items and work items. 7 of the core topics, the first set, were considered candidates for starting technical work in Q4 2023 if they would be approved by SA in September. And those first set of 7 core topics are in the darker colour on the right-hand side. In addition to agreeing on the number of topics that would be worked on for Release 19, SA endorsed some guidelines that SA2 endorsed in their May meeting this year. So SA2's assumptions are that we will have 36 time units per meeting, and there'll be 8 SA2 meetings from the start of release 19 until the release 19 stage 2 freeze. There'll be 6 time units per meeting out of the 36 that will be treated as a buffer for TAI 19, for release 18 alignment, for other overflow issues, and for 5G deployment issues. And so the SA2 available capacity overall for release 19 is a maximum number of TUs to be estimated at 134 for any particular study item or work item. We should limit the number of TUs to 14, and the recommended maximum number of release 19 study items and work items should be between 10 and 14. And this was because, as we saw in release 18, we had 28 study items and work items, and that proved very difficult to schedule for face-to-face meetings in particular. So after the 17 core topics were agreed in SA in June, SA2 had moderated discussions ahead of the August SA2 meeting over the summer months using NWM. These were moderated by experienced SA2 delegates. The companies provided their input and opinions, and the moderators created study item descriptions from these inputs and opinions. These included work tasks that define the scope of the study items, and also time unit estimates for each of the work tasks. The study item descriptions were submitted by the moderators for discussion during the August SA2 meeting. So looking at the outcome of the SA meeting 101 in September, the 5 study item descriptions were approved, and it was agreed that work can begin in SA2 during Q4 2023, and that approved first set is listed on the right-hand side. 3 of the first set candidates that had previously been identified were not approved, as discussion of the work tasks for those study item descriptions and the time unit estimates did not reach consensus. There were an additional 10 core study item descriptions that were briefly discussed at the SA meeting, but no further progress was made. And 3 additional items were added to the original 17 core items. And so SA2 was asked to have a moderated discussion of these additional 3 as well, on architecture related to roaming value-added services, on 5GS operational improvements for network slicing, and for enhanced traffic management. So now we move on to the SA2 meeting that happened in October this year, SA2 number 159. And technical work started on 4 of the 5 SA approved first set items. One wasn't able to start because of travel restrictions for the rapporteur. As usual, drafting sessions and online discussion were used to try and progress the study item descriptions that were not approved in SA. A small number, 3, were considered technically stable and to have a reasonable time unit estimate, and were recorded as endorsed. The remaining 15 still had a lack of consensus on the technical details in their work tasks or the time unit estimates, or had significant dependencies on RAN, and companies were reluctant to agree those work item or study items without knowing the outcome of the parallel discussions in RAN on those dependencies. So these 15 were postponed, and further work is needed ahead of and during the SA2 meeting in November. So to summarize the overall status of the Release 19 study items and work items status following the October meeting for SA2. We have the 5 in-progress items that have previously been approved by SA. Then for SA2, we'd endorsed 3 study items, and then an additional set of postponed items where, again, we were not able to get sufficient consensus on the technical content of the work tasks and the TU estimates. And so there are a large number of items that go forward for further discussion in the next meeting, and we will have to, in SA, eventually reduce this number to a number in line with the previous guidance of 10 to 14 study items or work items for release 19. So what's the plan for SA2 number 160, the November meeting in Chicago? So we'll focus discussion on the postponed items. We'll try and endorse them or agree them if possible, ensuring that the time unit estimates are reasonable, the work tasks are technically correct, and dependencies between work tasks and with other groups, especially RAN, are documented. We will request SA to determine the content of release 19 based on a subset of the SA2 agreed or SA2 endorsed items. And of course, this will need to fit within the guidance previously endorsed by SA and SA2 on the limits on TU numbers per item and also the overall number of items. Proposals for TI 19 and candidates will be on the agenda for information, but will not be discussed until Q1 next year. So the expectations of the meeting in December for SA number 102 in Edinburgh, are that SA will determine the package of release 19 SA2 study and work items, and this will be based on the in progress, the agreed, endorsed, and endorsed or agreed items on the left-hand side. The total package approved by SA will need to be in line with the previous guidance of 14 items maximum, and a total of 134 time units, and rapporteurs will be assigned at that point. All in progress, agreed or endorsed SA2 items will be included in the discussion. And then for all of the study items and work items that are approved by SA, technical work on these can continue in some cases or start in Q1 next year. And for the TI 19 items for consideration, these will be further discussed in SA2 in Q1 next year. So we'll see on the left-hand side a long list of items that will need to be reduced in number to between 10 and 14 by SA, and potentially some of the scope of the items coming from SA2 will need to be reduced within the guidance of a maximum of 14 per item and an overall total of 134. And finally, I'd like to cast a brief look ahead to release 20. We're at this stage only in the early stages of release 19 for SA2, but we need to be aware of the work about to begin on release 20. SA1 will already be working on service requirements from early 2024, and these will include further 5G advanced requirements, and also requirements for 6G could start being discussed in mid-2024. SA2's freeze date and 3GPP's Stage 2 freeze in general for release 19 is December 2024, just over a year away. And 3GPP will start to discuss the 6G timeline in December 2023. So the decision on release 20 timeline is still to be made, but will be made quite soon. So, thank you for your attention and for your time, and I'll say goodbye.